The Disney Lorcana Store Championship season is very much upon us, and this is the first video of looking at the best decks from the weekend. Of course, the top 8 players win Scar promos, but the top 2 get those playmats, and we are going to be focusing in on the top 2 in particular in this video, while also throwing in some really spicy decks which also won a Scar. So a big shout out to all the local communities for hosting these events and participating in these events. It's really amazing to see so many set championships. You can check all the deck links in the description, and also you can work out, for example, how many players was at this event. For example, if there's a store where there was only 12 players or 40 players, the store with 40 players, obviously you should probably take a little bit more notice of in terms of a deck that you're looking to net deck. Just worth mentioning. This one's Lorcana Justice, finishing second with a very interesting Sapphire Steel list. Great to see Arthur in there. If ever there was a deck for Arthur, it would be Sapphire Steel. No whole new world in this one, but relying on card draw through the Flaversham, the Beast, and the Dock as well. First place at this one is Woody at Griffin's Gaming, who is playing Emerald Steel. Not that similar to Xantayed's latest list, sticking with the Beast and the Tinkerbell. I think Beast is a really good meta call at the moment. We saw the Ed won with Ruby Amethyst without any Madame Medusas, so I think that Emerald Steel is a pretty good meta call in general at the moment, and I think Beast is great in there. I do want to shout out Card Market, who sponsor this video. It's the best place to buy singles in Europe. Fascinating to see Tremaine as the 3rd best-selling card of the week after Ed's win. Up next, we've got Earlmeister, friend of the channel, content creator, and he managed to win his set championships with his trusty Amethyst Steel. And if you want to see Earl play this deck on my channel, I did post a video earlier this week, me versus Earl in a Amethyst Steel battle, and I believe this is a very similar list. He's still sticking strong with his Olaf, despite me criticizing it. He doesn't care, he does what he wants, and I have to respect that. You guys already know, as soon as I see one Magic Broom, it makes me a bit sad. I would always play 4 of these cards perfectly, but I love to see the Tinkerbell in there. Of course, with these Amethyst Steel decks, you can really go many different routes, and Earl has a more long game plan with cards like the Rabbit and the Tinkerbell, as well as no Dock. Congratulations, Earl. Up next, we've got a deck list which was actually sent to me via email. So big shout out to Derek, who won his set championships using a list very similar to what I've been playing, which is really nice to see. He said he didn't have too much practice with it, but managed to take it down. Did make a couple of tweaks, adding in a bell, which I think is a great addition. And overall, this is a very solid list. So a big shout out to Derek for emailing me that. Great to see people succeeding with the decks I recommend. Up next, we've got Ruby Amethyst. This one is your Tremaines, no Medusas, but not... Oh, there is 3 copies of the library, so it's very similar to Ed's deck, with the big difference here being 2 Elsas have been added in with, and also 2 Mauis, with 2 Magic Brooms cut, 1 Tremaine cut, and 1 Be Prepared cut. So great to see Ed's deck still doing really well. Emerald Amethyst took this one down, though, with the 1-drop Clarabelle being in there. You would imagine the big one is as well. She certainly is. 1 Banzai, only 3 snakes. I would usually recommend playing 4. Only 2 rabbits is interesting as well. I mean, you definitely have an awkward time playing both Genie and Rabbit. So I think it makes sense to have this kind of a split. And that also makes more sense to play only 3 snakes if you're only playing 2 rabbits. The thing with the snakes is they're so strong with the Cursed Merfolk. And yeah, Clarabelle's great. I just think if you're playing Amethyst, you should always include those 1-drop cards which quest and can draw, like the Magic Broom. But I don't need to keep going on about Magic Brooms like I do every flipping video. Up next, a top 4, but how could I not include Ruby Amber? Reddit seems to think that I hate Ruby Amber, and that's why I rate it very lowly. I actually really like Ruby Amber. I think it's a really fun color combination. It's got... we know how Ruby Amber should be built, right? Like, it hasn't really changed much. So a lot of the Ruby Amber lists are quite well refined. Whereas I think a lot of the other more rogue color combinations, like, for example, Ruby Emerald or Sapphire Emerald, we don't really have a clear shell of how these should be built. But Ruby Amber hasn't really changed much over the years, but there's some interesting top end. I like the Milan Elite Archer. Also, I really like Wreck-It Ralph. I think Wreck-It Ralph is a very underestimated card. You can put Rapunzel back in your hand and gain 2 lore for your troubles. Teeth and Ambitions to give you a little bit of early control can be nice. And of course, you can heal it then with the Rapunzel. 1 Goofy with Rush and Evasive, 1 Hydra. Overall, a list I like the look of quite a bit. I have to say this Raya card I think is fantastic. Once during your turn, whenever a card is put into your Inkwell, you may ready another character of yours they can't quest. But with Gaston, you can use Gaston's ability and have Raya down, ink a card, and you're good to go. Then you can ready Gaston and use him again multiple times in a single turn. Also, Sven with Gaston I think is really interesting. But this Raya card is definitely one that I think is quite underrated. This tournament, though, at Gamers Academy was won by Christian on Blurple. This list looks quite similar to what we saw the players in the North American Championships playing, but the big thing in here is one spicy copy of Merlin. When you play this character, if you use Shift to play him, you may search your deck for any card, put that card into your hand, and then shuffle your deck. Of course, you can shift Merlin onto the crab, onto the goat, or onto the rabbit. Probably not optimal, but very spicy, and when it works, it's going to feel fantastic. I love Finders Keepers in this deck as well. Draw 3 cards. Blurple has, of course, the ability to ramp up, and you often have more ink than cards to play, so being able to just spend 5 ink to draw 3, I think is a really nice addition to these Blurple decks, and it's great to see Blurple doing well. And speaking of Blurple doing well at a different set championships at Gendron, we've got Eddie playing Blurple, who finished second. He's gone for the Donald Duck flat-footed. He's got 1 copy of Hades, Lord of the Dead, which we did see getting a top 8 finish at the Euros. We've also got Kuzco Selfish Emperor, sticking with the 3 Elsas, which I think is a good amount for these decks. Of course, you can go Tipo or Sail on 2, Genie on 3, Elsa on 4, Shift Elsa on 5. Only playing 3 Tipos, I don't like the look of. I think you really want to maximize with these decks that near guaranteed turn to ramp. So I think that 4 Tipos would be more wise. I think it's a little bit controversial to cut one. But of course, if you find your turn 2 ramp with only 7, you'd rather play 7 than 8. But statistically, I think the Tipo is probably going to be worth it on average. Shelley won this one, though, with Emerald and Amethyst. Has the 1-drop Clarabelle in there as well. No room for the magic brooms, but 3 Banzais, 3 snakes, and just 2 of these legendary Clarabelles. Emerald Amethyst very well positioned at the moment. I told you I had a lot of decks, and oh my goodness, Amber Ruby, the deck that I put in F tier, has won a set championships. Let's go Amber Ruby. I love to see it. And this is a list which I like the look of. Goes for the Milan 1-drop. No room for Moana, but preferring Pluto instead. What's really cool about Pluto is you can go Pluto on 1 into Doc or Gaston on 2. And you can start ramping up really, really quickly with that. There's Rapunzel, there's 3 Super Goofs. Vanellope von Schweetz is a great rush character with evasive. Of course, the Mufasa's in there. 3 legendary Sisus is quite a lot, but when you're able to shift it, I can certainly see it. And also those 2 Maleficent Dragons for the potential high roll. A nicely built list, and it's great to see Amber Ruby still being represented and still taking down set championships. Emerald Steel discard for Colin, finishing second at Fire and Dice. This looks exactly card for card like Zan Syed's list, if I'm not mistaken, with that 3 Smee, 3 Muses, 2 Doc. Can't go wrong with net decking Zan Syed. There might have been a card or 2 difference, but I don't think so. Up next, Steel Mufasa. Oh my goodness. Now, I have to say, I think that Steel Mufasa is pretty underrated. I really, really do. I actually have a feeling, now don't quote me on this, but I believe there might have been a Steel Mufasa player at the Euros. I think there might have been. And what's very interesting about this is you still play the Cinderella with the songs, sort of similar to the Diggy Diggy Hole with Doc, but you just play Mufasa instead of Seven Dwarfs Mine, basically. And Mufasa, you can't really go wrong. This John Silver card is very interesting that it started to pick up some steam. It's the kind of card that I personally would just, forget about, and when I'm building a deck, not even consider. But people have started to play it quite a bit. When you play this character, chosen character can't challenge during their next turn. We saw Harlan using this card in his Sapphire Steel aggro deck, which won the Content Creator Set Championships, and I lost to. And when I asked him about it, he said that this card is really good to just stall out for an extra turn. Being able to use it on Maui Half Shark in particular, meaning that Maui Half Shark can't challenge the next turn, meaning they can't grab back that Pirate's Life, might just give you that extra turn that you need. And he also said, Harlan, that is, that you could play multiple John Silvers back-to-back, like 2 in a row, is often enough to help you win the game. So sort of similar to Pete in a way that it can just help you stall out to victory. And Sven is a card I love. I actually mentioned it already. I think it's a very undervalued card. It is a card I'm a big fan of. You could sing a song with Cinderella, ready Cinderella, and sing another song, for example, which is pretty damn spicy. So big shout out to Alvin with the Steel Mufasa deck. Another first place, we have Messy Blurple. This one with 10 1-drops, just 3 Brooms and 3 Diablos. Does have the 4 T-Pose and the 4 Sail. 2 Finders Keepers, only 2 of the legendary Elsas, and 1 Library, 2 Mukduk Manas, 2 Donalds. I like the look of this list quite a bit. They've called it messy. Perhaps they weren't sure exactly which cards to play 4 of and which to play 3 of. Which is certainly one of the more tricky things to decide on, but frankly also one of the least important things, right? The most important thing is your shell of cards. Whether you play 3 Magic Brooms or 4 Magic Brooms is not going to make a big difference in your average game. Over 100 games, sure, but in your average tournament, it's probably not going to make too much of a difference, those finer decisions. Our next second place tournament for Blurple. Blurple is very popular with the community. 1 Magic Broom in this one, 2 legendary Elsas, 3 Bells, 3 Donald Ducks, and 3 Mukduk Manas. Great to see Blurple really popping off this set. But the winner of this one at Ravensburger store, which is pretty cool, is Shinobi with their Emerald and Amethyst. Also rocking Olaf. The 1-drop Pegasus, a card I like a lot. There's the Prince Philip. I think this might be the same deck which Mo Shamblin played and managed to get top 4, at least top 8 in the Disney Lorcana North American Championships. I think top 8. I think they lost their top 8 game to Zan. Yeah, awesome deck. Really cool to see. I'm still unconvinced by Olaf. So a big reason to play Olaf in these decks is certainly in Ruby Amethyst. It's something that No I'm Not or Kendall has, I think, can be credited with popularizing Olaf somewhat. Of course, Mo Shamblin played Olaf in their Emerald Amethyst deck, but I hadn't seen Olaf really at all until No I'm Not started playing it in Ruby Amethyst. And I think the general idea of it is that it's a good card into Cinderella. Like if you're playing against Steel Songs, they play a Cinderella. You can play Olaf, and it can't be removed by a Let the Storm Rage On. I would counterpoint, though, Diablo is also a great, if arguably not better, response to Cinderella. The problem can be if you're playing a deck like Ruby Amethyst with just 8 1-drops and you only have Flynn and Snake as your 2-drops, if your 1-drop gets removed and you're relying on Snake on 2, you might not have a turn 2 play. So I think a big reason that Olaf has started creeping into these decks is because of its 1/3 stat line into Songs. I very much doubt that it's worth playing over these Trenderbox Diablos and Brooms. But you guys know me. I've been harping on for years, almost at this point, about how much I like these cards. But I have to say, my comments about the Magic Brooms and the Diablos have aged pretty well, as we saw Ed obviously playing 12 copies, 4 of each, in his North American Championship. So I still, when I look at this card, I'm like, really, you'd rather play this than just more of the 1-drops that I think are the best cards in the game. You won't find me playing Olaf. I spoke to Reese about the Olaf as well, actually, at the weekend, who finished 2nd in Lille, and he was the top seed after Swiss in Euros. And he said, yeah, I mean, if you're playing a card like Olaf or the 1/3 mini with Teeth and Ambitions, I can see it, but without it, he's also unconvinced. But yeah, there's my 2 cents. Obviously, it's not a bad card by any stretch. It's just not for me. Luis won this one also with Emerald Amethyst, and I promise I didn't know this, but there's no Olaf in this one, and there's all the 1-drops that I like. I have to say, I love Pegasus. I think Pegasus is... I made a comment in a recent video saying I think Pegasus is the best inkable 1-drop outside of Amethyst, and my comment section, as you guys often do, corrected me, because Cinderella exists as well, right? The 1-drop Cinderella. But outside of that, for me, Pegasus, one of the most slept on cards in the game. I think this card is absolutely brilliant. And already, I really like this deck. A ton of 1-drops. All really good 1-drops. And the Pegasus shift line is really underrated. We saw Mo Shamblin also playing that. The Go-Go's in there. The Kits, the Lyles. I have to say, and the Prince Philip, which is also Mo Shamblin. This is kind of like Mo Shamblin's deck without the Olaf. So for me, I really like this one. This is possibly my favorite Emerald Amethyst list I've seen in a while. Up next, we've got Jafar Wheel. I actually have a cleaner image of this one in a moment. This was the Brotherhood, which is my local store championships. And look who's on it. It's Lorcana Villain. Top 4. Where am I, you guys might ask? Not in the top 4, sadly. I did stream this tournament, of course. Lorcana Villain also got to play his top 8 game on stream. He did lose his top 4 match in a Ruby Amethyst mirror against a player that was at the European Championship. So Baker did a great job. I actually finished 9th with my Emerald and Sapphire deck, just missing out on the top cut, unfortunately. But I had a great time, and you guys can expect a video on Emerald Sapphire soon. already since that tournament, I feel like I've optimized the list a bit more, but less about my deck and more about Baker's. It looks similar to what Ed was playing. He's cut a 1-drop Diablo, and he's playing many fewer libraries. Ed was, of course, on 4. Baker is on 3. He's turned the Medusa and Tremaine split to a 2-2. He has also added in 1 Elsa and 2 Mauis, as well as adding an extra crab. I think all very reasonable changes. Of course, Ed's deck was very much teched for a heavy Ruby Sapphire metagame. I have to say, going into Brotherhood as well, when I play here, I expect quite a lot of Ruby Sapphire as well. So I think it was a good meta call for Baker to still keep like a decent amount of what Ed played with like the library and the Tremaines, but there's also a lot of aggro players and things like that, right, at your local game stores. So overall, Baker did super well. Very unlucky not to get into the top 2 in what is an incredibly tough locals. I have to say, for me, it's the toughest I've played at, and I think it's certainly the toughest in the UK, at least on paper. Skill Ganna, who beat me in Swiss. It was basically the game which knocked me out. And again, this was played on stream. We had some awesome games, but Jafar making it into the top 4 is great to see. Robin Hood and Archimedes, your main shift targets, alongside Jafar to sing A Whole New World. And very cool to see them playing. This genie is actually... Is this the list? This isn't exactly right, because they had the other genie as well. They had the genie, which is like a 3/5 and draws cards. So I'll write in the comments, I'll message them after I record this. But they also had the genie, which had like the 3/5. So it was very, very similar to this, but maybe like 1 card different because of that 3/5 genie that popped off against me. There might have only been 1 copy of that in the deck. But yeah, really, really cool to see Jafar doing well. It's a deck which I like a lot, and it caused me some problems. So fair play. Up next, into the top 2, and we have Jovan Lemonade playing Ruby Amethyst. The final was played on stream, of course. This is Ed's deck, but they cut 2 uninkables. They moved Lady Tremaine into Maui, but guess what? They bricked in the final, where they had so many uninkables, and yeah, commiserations to Jovan. A great run. They were the higher seed going into the final, but despite cutting 2 of the uninkables, they still managed to brick, which is really, really unfortunate. Jovan, a player that was at the Disney Lorcana European Championships. And the winner, Teng Ma, the man that I've been on record as saying is the best player in the UK. He didn't qualify through his last chance qualifier to the Euros, and he would have been really gutted not to. I think I was surprised not to see him there. He is the man that I've never beaten. This guy is so consistent. He always beats me. I did actually play against his deck in a little friendly on stream, and that's going to be covered in a video. I went 1-1 with him with my green-blue deck, so that's at least something. But Teng Ma, he loves his control decks. He often plays a lot of different things, but this is his favorite deck to play, and he did manage to take it down, despite being the lower seed against Ruby Amethyst in the final. But as I say, that game 3 where Jovan really, really bricked, and that just allowed Teng Ma to have the ascendancy. But a great player, and definitely a deck I would consider testing yourselves. I'm not a Ruby Sapphire expert, but Teng Ma, great player. You're not going to be able to go wrong with his 60 cards. Big shout out to Brotherhood Games for having me, and congrats again to Baker for making it into the top 4 at a very tough locals. Steel Song Simba 1-turn order games with Amber Steel songs with the Simba in there, with the Whole New World as well. Very similar to Frank Carston's lists from earlier on in the set. Now, this one I couldn't ignore, guys, okay? This wasn't actually a set championships, because this was in the Philippines, and I don't believe the Philippines has official game support, but I know Moyen went over there and played at some locals and said that they've got an awesome community, and I saw that there was a tournament in the Philippines, and how could I not include this deck list? 1-drop Maleficent, because Bessie says so. Shout out to my friends in the Philippines. This is Philip playing Amethyst Steel. Listen, 1-drop Maleficent's great. Without Doc, I'm not sure it's that good. I'm not going to lie. I think if you're playing the 1-drop Maleficent, you also play Doc. If you're playing Rabbit, you probably don't play the 1-drop. But maybe you do. Like, it's going to help you against the Ruby Sapphire decks for sure. But I think that Rabbit is much more suited to a slower game plan, whereas Doc is suited to a faster game plan. But awesome to see this title, 1-drop Maleficent. And if you're interested, 1-drop Maleficent is currently about €4, €3.77. Much cheaper if you want to get the French version, of course. But in English, it's about €3.77. Shout out to Card Market, of course, who sponsor the channel. Blurple won this tournament in the Philippines, which again is really cool to see. While not an official set championships, I don't believe they have official support, so it's a tournament I wanted to highlight nonetheless. And it's really awesome to see people playing the game over in the Philippines. So big shout out to all those people over there. Up next, back to the set championships. We have an Amber Ruby in the top 4. I promise you guys, I don't hate Amber Ruby. I know Reddit thinks I do. I just don't think it's that good. But if I have an opportunity to showcase a Ruby Amber deck, you can bet that I will. So congratulations to Amot at Beyond Odyssey picking up a Scar with their Ruby and Amber deck. And it's a very different list with Snow White in there, being able to remove damage, Minnie Mouse plus Minnie Mouse Shift when you play this character. If you use Shift to play her, you may search your deck for a character card and put it on top of your deck. Pretty expensive to shift onto Minnie, but it's going to be nice to just be able to pick up your Mufasa. And the Snow White, which seems a bit out of place, is a great shift target for the Well-Wisher. Whenever this character quests, you may return a character card from your discard to your hand. And I have to say, if ever there's a deck for Snow White, it's Ruby Amber, because you can pick up your Rapunzel from your discard, put her back into your hand, rinse and repeat. So awesome to see Ruby Amber doing well. Speaking of awesome to see doing well, we have a Scar Champion Playmat won by Sapphire Amber, and you absolutely love to see that. It's an aggro deck which has Scrooge McDuck, Rapunzel, McDuck Manor as the most expensive cards. You've got Lilo Escape Artist, you've got Anna plus Heroes, you've got the Tiana, which is a really cool card, which I think is probably better than people give it credit for. Only 3 Alices, which I'm a bit surprised by, but I also love to see Zipper in there. During your turn, whenever a card is put into your Inkwell, another chosen character gains resist 1 until the start of your turn. And it's got Ward. So has Wendy. So many Ward characters in this deck. I think Sapphire Amber aggro is a pretty cool deck, and I love to see it taking down the set champs. That is so damn cool. Up next, a Blurple Baymax, which has Tadasha Hamada and Baymax, which Tadashi Hadama, my bad, which is quite thematic. Yeah, that's right. I watch Big Hero 6. I take my job seriously, guys. I'm catching up on Disney films. I know that his work lives on through Baymax. During an opponent's turn, whenever this character is banished, you may put the top card of your deck into your Inkwell face down, then put this card. So Tadashi, if it gets removed, is going to be getting you 2 ink, which is pretty damn spicy in a more aggressive style of deck. Of course, one thing that makes him a bit awkward is that you usually play Tipo or Sail on 2, and do you really want to play him on 3 when you could be playing Genie or Rabbit or Goat? Well, maybe if you combine him with something like a Broom or a Trenderbox Followers, that's not a bad turn 3 at all. And Baymax is in there as well when you play this character, and whenever he quests, you may remove up to 2 damage from another chosen character of yours and gain 1 lore for each damage removed this way. Very, very strong card and a very cool deck. 2 Greatstone Dragons. We saw in France last set, Greatstone Dragon really pop off in Blurple. So I think it's something that people should experiment with a bit more. I really like this list. Looks like it's also in a French tournament. Coincidence? I think not. And the first Ruby Sapphire deck of the video, I promise. This is not because I think Ruby Sapphire is overrated. This is maybe just a reflection that it's not as good as we think it might be, or that the average person thinks. I still stand by, this is the most overrated deck in Disney Lorcana. Of course, it's incredibly strong. Of course, it's tough to beat. But I still will... it's a sword I'm willing to die on that this deck is overrated. It's still great. Very, very good, especially in the right player's hands. And Bonifant takes it down with the Ruby Sapphire with a Pirate's Life in there. Our next Steel Sapphire, Justin Morales. This also was not a set championship, but it was about a 40-player tournament in the Netherlands. And Justin Morales, a player we know very well from the European challenge events, always playing Sapphire Steel and always impressing us. I don't know if he's won a Golden Mickey, but he's had some very, very good results and some very impressive games. And 3 Whole New Worlds, 2 dimes, still sticking strong with the Fishbone Quill. And it's a very cool deck. If you guys like Sapphire Steel, definitely one I would recommend checking out, because Justin certainly knows what he's doing. But the deck that won this tournament, or no, is it the same tournament? It is the same tournament. It's actually 4th place. I don't think we had the winning deck list. It's my latest favorite color combination, which is Sapphire Emerald, utilizing the Tipo and Sail on turn 2 to play often the Muses on 3, or Grammatala or Scrooge, sing some songs, bounce things back. It's the deck that I played this weekend as well at my set championships. In fact, both of my set championships. My list is a little bit different. I play Flavisham, but I'll be sharing my list over the next few days. But the key is the muses. I think this is quite similar to the Forbidden Mountains list, who posted a video about this deck, because I got asked am I playing Forbidden Mountains list, and then I went to check his video out, so big shout out to Forbidden Mountain. He was also playing the Peter Pan Neverland Prankster. This character enters play exerted. While this character is exerted, each opposing character can't gain lore unless one of their characters has challenge this turn. Bent My Will, absolutely insane. A lot of you would have seen me play a similar deck at my set championships at the weekend on that stream. It is honestly so underrated, so strong, difficult to play. I also think difficult to optimize, but I do feel as though my version with Flavisham and Popsicles is the way to go. I'm actually pretty convinced I've come very close to optimizing that deck, but this is an awesome take on it. I love Genie on the Job. I love Baymax. This one doesn't have Flavisham, so it's relying more on the Clarabelle for the card draw, but also the Tala as well. The problem with not playing Flavisham in a deck like this is like your opponent can just play around Clarabelle by dumping their hand quite easily. And okay, you have options to bounce things back to your opponent's hand with Mother Knows Best, with the Muses, with the Genie as well, and the Mother Gothels. And so this deck is very much relying on Clarabelle to draw cards, which is fine. It can work. I just think Flavisham is too good not to play. Right. Also, Ice Block plus Muses, I think, is quite necessary. I do like to see, though, that there's no Under the Sea. I think you either play the Under the Sea or the Muses. Like, I think this is a super, super sound take. It's actually very similar to what I play. Cards like Genie, John Silver, Mother Gothel, I think, are all really, really good options because they give you a little bit of control, which my version lacks. I just think if you're playing Sapphire, you've got to play Flavisham. It's just too good not to play. It really is. But that's awesome to see it in the top 4. We didn't have the winning deck list from that tournament at the time of recording. Blurple winning a set championships in France with a similar setup to what we've been seeing in the other versions. These lists are looking quite refined at this moment in time. Steel Song at Siren Games takes it down with the Aerial Whole New World with one John Silver in there, as well as a couple of Prince Naveen's. Ruby Amethyst taking down this event, which also looks like it's in France. The French know how to play, guys. Like, honestly, I still think the French are the strongest players in Disney Lorcana on average. They have a crazy big community over there. 3 libraries, very similar to Ed's list. They have 2 Bells, 2 Medusas, 2 Tremaines, only 2 Rabbits, but 4 Genies. So it's actually not that similar to Ed's list, but maybe taking some inspiration by playing the library from Ed. Steel Amber up next with the Diggy Hole, as we are calling it. Only 2 Lilo Escape Artists, but of course you got the Doc, the Happy, the 7 Dwarfs Mine, which forms the core of these decks. Up next we have Who on Earth is Alice? And this is a Steel Sapphire deck with Mickey Mouse. Underestimating him is a recipe for disaster. RLS Legacy Cannon. This card is so bad. Why would you play this, mate? What? This card is like one of the worst cards in the game, isn't it? Let me read it again and change my mind, perhaps. Ba-boom! You can exert it, spend 2 ink, discard a card, deal 2 damage to chosen character or location. That's very expensive. So you pay 3 ink for an uninkable, and then you pay 2 ink, and you discard a card to deal 2 damage. What if you just play Fire the Cannons? Now, in this deck, maybe you could combine it with Baymax. I mean, it's spicy, but it's also pretty outrageous. You're not going to see that at a Disney Lorcana challenge, let me tell you. But fair play. 4 Gantus, 4 Alice. I think that Alice Gantu combo that Harlan played at the Content Creator Set Champs is so cool. So fair play to our friend, the Grumpy One. And then the deck that won this one is Amber Steel Songs with the Simba in there as one of the shift options. We've got a few more decks to look at. We've got Genie and Friends at Timmy Max Comics and Games taking it down with 1 copy of the Gazelle, which is a nice tech card to deal with Diablo. It also has the Sir Hiss and the Don Carnage, as well as 1 Ursula Sea Witch Queen. No Magic Brooms. I'm sad. But these decks, you know, I'm kidding, obviously. I just love a Magic Broom. Another Ruby Sapphire deck. This one in Over the Brick. And Ruby Sapphire taking this one down. I don't really like talking about Ruby Sapphire decks that much. I don't know. I'm not an expert, so... Akira up next, winning this one with Emerald and Amethyst. Has a bunch of the 1-drops I like, that's for sure. Looks very similar again to the most shambling deck with the Pegasus Shift, which is a card I love. 3 rabbits, 4 genie, 1 bibbidi bobbidi boo. Pretty cool. Prince Philip's also pretty good. So what are you using bibbidi bobbidi boo on? Well, you could use it on a rabbit. You could use it on a go-go. There's some spicy things you can do with bibbidi bobbidi boo. And this one, obviously, with the 4 genies. Genie, it is starting to creep down in price. It peaked at $22. It's now down at about 18. Maybe there's one right now for 15 euros. Maybe, obviously, with Ed cutting it from his Ruby Amethyst list, it's starting to go on the decline a bit. I think it's interesting to see. Amber Steel with no Rapunzel. She's too expensive. I love it. Patrick not wanting to buy those Rapunzels, but still taking it down nonetheless. I won't give in. Return a character with cost 2 or less from your discard to your hand. That is a very cool card with Doc. I like that. This is a really cool take on a budget-friendly version of Amber Steel. Big shout out to Patrick. Honestly, this is my favorite deck of the video so far. If it wasn't for the title, I might have been like, why are they not playing Rapunzel? But that's just a stark reminder to both myself and everyone watching. These are set championships. These aren't the Euros. These aren't the Lorcana Challenge events, right? These are people playing at their local game store, potentially on a budget, potentially just playing for fun, and then they just have a really good run. This is so awesome to see. She's too expensive. What a deck name, mate. Ruby Amber! Oh my goodness, it's the Ruby Amber show today. Taking it down at Improbable Escapes with Vanellope von Schweetz, as well as the Rush Vanellope as well. Not a shift, just a rush. Jasmine. Whenever this character quests, each opponent loses 1 law. Queen of Farts is in there. The Mulan is in there with support. There is this Vanellope as well. Whenever you play another princess character, all opposing characters get -1 strength. So there is a Vanellope shift. Moana's in there. So it's like a princess and queen themed Ruby Amber deck with the Queen Sensicore. At the start of your turn, if you have a princess or queen character in play, gain 1 law. Exert, spend 2 ink, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a princess or queen character, you may put it into your hand. Otherwise, put it on top of your deck. Super awesome to see the princess/queen theme Ruby Amber deck taking down a Scar champion. Playmat. Up next, we've got another Dwarfs Mine deck at Excelsior Comics. Sorry. I'm very bad at pronouncing things and reading things, not a strength of mine. English is not a strength of mine in general. This character enters play exerted unless you have a character named Chip in play. Where's Chip? Where's Chip? Where's Chip? Where's Chip? Chip? Chip's not in the deck, mate. So Dale's coming in exerted as a 3/4. It's basically Moana, but inkable, but it comes in exerted. It's honestly not bad at all. I feel like there might be slightly better cards, though, available. But congratulations to Ultimate Buffalo. We've got 2 more decks. We've got Ruby Amethyst at Lobo cards winning the whole thing with that 1 legendary Sisu, 2 Medusa, 2 Tremaine, 2 Maui, 2 Elsa. And finally, last but not least, we've got Ruby Sapphire, but with King Candy as a 1-drop, just a 2/2 1-drop, maybe threatening the shift that isn't even there. There's definitely some value in playing a random 1-drop which has a shift target compared to, like, I don't know, Flounder, which doesn't have a shift target. Like, the King Candy is just inherently more strong because your opponent's thinking, oh, if they're playing King Candy, they probably have the shift. And then they might trade their Smee for your King Candy, for example. So I like the King Candy as just a turn 1 play to maybe control the board a bit. Most people we see don't go for it, but I can certainly see the merit of it. That's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Big shout out to Card Market for sponsoring the video. Big shout out to all the stores, all the gamers, all the players. If you guys have some cool set championships decks, which you did well with, and you want to be featured in the next video, drop me an email, post it to me on Twitter or in the Discord. Whatever you want to do, and we'll get you featured for next week if the deck's good. Just be warned, if you share a deck list with me, you have to be prepared to have your deck roasted in a positive way. All right, guys, thanks so much. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Cheers.